So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:40. So this is our annual work session with the town council. And so I'm going to actually just turn things right over to Peter because I know you guys have your 7:30 meeting tonight, so we'll get right into it.
Great, well, it's a pleasure to see everybody. Thank you all for being here this evening. This, every year, we just kind of do a very high level of what some of the drivers are around the budget every year. And so we're here to kind of give you a quick overview, take any questions that you might have as we go into budget season, and then move forward from there. So, I'll just start with thank you for your support of the schools. I think, no matter what the schools have asked of the council, you all have been, certainly thoughtful in your questions and your support, but really have the best interests of the community, in the front of your minds when you're supporting our students, which I really appreciate. So, I know last year, we, went to the council with a 1.38% increase on the town contribution, right? And so we were well below the rate of inflation last year. And you all came forward with that 1.38, which was really helpful to us. And if you think about what we were working on last year, a lot of those pieces continue into this year. So one particular area of focus for us is early childhood education and our preschool. That's something that our community really wanted and needed, is high quality preschool care. And it's been an amazing success. So we have all those little ones in school, and what we know from the data that we have been collecting is that our students that go through Narragansett preschool are really ahead of the game in terms of their development of reading, their development of numeracy, literacy, all those different pieces. And just a reminder about our community is that we are still at around a 20% students in poverty rate. And so if you think about the needs of students in poverty, a lot of that is around numeracy and literacy, and course early childhood education has a marked effect on that. So we had enough interest. We had originally in the budget time requested funding for 6 classes. We had enough interest to be able to open a 7th class last year, so we now have 105 students in our preschool, 3 and 4 grades this year. So our CTE programs continue to expand. So I know Jim sent out to you, and I would kind of put out to you as well, is that our agri-science FFA program continues to be a leader in the state. So I was just telling Jesse we have about 100 kids in that program, which is really amazing. Our computer science is, again, one of the top programs in the state. We have all sorts of different programs there, including a networking program that's one of the few that Cisco through level 4. It's one of the few that are in the state. And our plumbing program continues to thrive. We're getting more and more students into that program. It's always going to be a smaller program, but they'll begin going up to the training center, the Union Training Center next year. So we're already planning for that, where they'll really start to do the hands-on pieces in the heavy-duty welding. They've been doing a lot of their academics in the first 2 years, doing the OSHA safety, all those different pieces, so they move forward in that program. And our education program, in partnership with URI, is getting a lot of notice across the state. For those of you who follow any news in education, one of the biggest needs in the state is a teacher pipeline. So pipeline like we're developing in partnership with URI is really a model for the rest of the state. So, if you think of those things, we also continue to work really hard on our day-to-day reading, writing, and mathematics. And so, again, one of the things that we need to continue to do is to raise the bar. That's true across the state, and that's true in Narragansett, to have more and more kids college and career ready. We continue to get our kids into great schools when they graduate, and they're doing very well. But we really think that we can continue to grow in that way. And so for us, really the program enhancement is around the day-to-day teaching and learning. It's also around making sure that our facilities are everything that they need to be. And so, last year our capital improvements really focused on things like roofs. You gotta make sure the place isn't leaking. Security upgrades in our pre-K and K classrooms, is really an area of focus for us. And for us, our enrollment is pretty steady. Our high school is the most numerous, the largest it's going to be in the last 5 years, going into next year. We do have some smaller cohorts of younger students, and we make staffing adjustments where we need to as that happens. So if we have a smaller cohort, we'll make a staffing adjustment to accommodate that. So for example, we know already, based on enrollments, that we will reduce one 8th grade teacher, at least as we go forward, and there may be other adjustments as we go forward. And so while we hope and know that we're attracting families to Narragansett for the schools, and I think that's really happening, we also know that overall in Rhode Island, there are just less children. And so for us, it's felt more dramatically in a smaller school system. But we do know that families are moving to Narragansett for the schools. I think we were ranked in the top 3 or 4 most recently in a couple of different polls. So that's 3. So that's really good for us. Some of our key budget drivers this year are very similar to what we've had in the past. 80% of our budget is staffing. And that's what a school is, right? It's really a place around teaching and learning that takes great teachers. We have great teachers in Narragansett, so that's 80% of our costs. We know we're going into the 3rd year of a 3-year contract for both our teachers and for our support staff. Both of them will be at a 1% increase for next year. We also know that healthcare continues to increase for us, so we're anticipating that's going to be about up to a 5% increase in the healthcare costs, and our contracts, our younger teachers move up on step. So overall, we anticipate around a 2% increase in staffing costs for next year. We also know that we have our capital improvement plan, for you all. And I'll hand this out. I hand it out to you every year, even though you've seen it every year. This is the from the council resolution. What the council in the past has asked for the school system to do is to devote 3% to capital improvement, which we have done every year, and it's just good budget management. So for us, that will be somewhere between $950,000 and $1 million. And per the council resolution, we were also asked to hold around 3% of our budget in reserve. And that's around $650,000. So those are also drivers for what we do. We also are in the beginning of our housing aid application, and so that's a cycle that goes through every 5 years in Rhode Island, where where we get our assistance from the state for any capital improvements that we're doing. So we are right now eligible for 35% of what we do, but we do have to go through the Department of Education process in order to be eligible for that beyond this year. And so for us, we're going to be starting down that road. There was a big report that went out, I think it's 2 years ago now, that caught a lot of headlines. It's called the Jacobs Report. Well, what they found is that while we do have some areas that we need to work on overall, our schools are in pretty good shape, but we do have some updating to do. And that's largely due in part to the commitment of the council and of the school committee to make sure that our schools remain in great shape. And so we're not in a position that some other towns are in that have let their facilities fall into disrepair and then have to play catch up at an even greater expense. For us, it's about investing the money along the way so that there are no surprises, right? And so for us, we'd rather invest a reasonable amount on a steady basis than let things go, defer maintenance, and then have to pay more down the road. So for us, we'll go through that process that, per the RIDE regulations, we have to hire an architect that goes along with that. We have to hire a owner's project manager that helps us go through that application. goes through different stages. So stage 1 and stage 2 will be through the spring. Stage 3 is the fall, where it's finally approved as we go forward. So part of that is discovering what is it that we need to do and what we'll need in both the immediate needs of the school system and of the town, and what will meet the kind of long-term pieces of the school system of the town. And so those are things that will be under consideration as we go forward. Another driver for us is really on state aid. We do anticipate our state aid will be approximately flat. You know, we may get a slight bump of a little more or a little less. It's really driven by how many students do we have, which is, you know, roughly equivalent of what we've had last year. How many students are in poverty and how many students are in need of services. So those are all factors that go into what we're doing. So overall, I will say that we do anticipate that you know, we'll continue with our pattern of a reasonable budget going forward. There are some things that we're working on in terms of our programs, but those are things of strengthening what we have. So strengthening the pre-K program, strengthening the CTE program, making sure that our day-to-day teaching learning is getting where it's going to be. And I'll just highlight, we've made some investments over time that have had huge payoff for our kids. So the laptop programs where students are really using the computers to access the latest teaching, learning, and technology has been a huge benefit to us. You know, the support of, you know, our AP classes and the college credits that the kids are getting, you know, are also huge pieces of what we do. And I would also say that the school committee has, you know, in the last couple of years, you know, really designed budgets in partnership with the town. And so, you know, Jim Manny and now Jim Tierney, you know, both are great partners to the school system. We speak regularly and really stay in close communication with one another. And I think that's really the key to successfully managing this, is having good communication, understanding the needs of the community, and working together to meet those needs. So I would also just put out to all of you as we go through this process, you know, if you have questions along the way, you know, certainly feel free to contact me. Many of you have come to the schools and, you know, certainly are participants in a lot of our events. I also invite you to come do a tour, come see pieces, you know, if there's things that you have questions about, you know, I would, you know, invite you to do that. I think one of the things that I will also kind of highlight for you is that you know, we have had a lot of changes in the school. So last year we eliminated an administrator position. So at the elementary school, we've reduced our support staff over time because we truly believe that resources should be closest to the classroom. And so we continually make technology upgrades that we think will help us devote our resources closer to the teaching and learning. And so we're a pretty lean organization. You're not going to see a lot of duplication, and you're not going to see a lot of places where we feel that the resources aren't being used to help students learn. So happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Yeah, so we're very happy that relationships worked out so well over the years. And so it's a, you know, this is such a preliminary meeting, so, you know, from my perspective, there's not a lot of detail at this meeting. But if people have any kind of, and not specific things, broader things they want to talk about, it's always a good time to bring them up.
I happened to be listening to the radio this morning, and I heard the Commissioner of Education on, and she said that she was going to be working with communities, tapping them on the shoulder and saying, hey, change this or share that. What's she going to tap you on and say, change this and share that to other communities?
I think, you know, Narragansett, like many of our neighboring communities, all of our neighboring communities, like the whole state, you know, one of our challenges is making sure that our students with disabilities meet standard on the state assessment system. And I think that's a challenge that we're working hard on. You know, I think that for us, it's really around making sure that we're teaching to meet the needs of the students that we have, and making sure that we are able to get them up to that standard.
Gotcha.
And so, I would say that as we go forward, we have very highly rated schools, amongst the best in the state. But for us, we feel like for our populations of students with disabilities, students who are in poverty, students who are transient, those are high-need students who require a level of expertise and level of resources that we need to further develop to help them continue to grow and be, really graduate and be productive citizens.
I just had a question about the out-of-district students coming in. Is that increasing every year?
It has been increasing every year. So we currently have 60 out-of-district students, and we continue to have a number of kids applying already for next year. So, typically works out between 20 to 30 students per cohort,
Yeah.
right?
So, yeah, okay. So you got a net per year? total
Between
students?
20 and 30, and that's excluding Jamestown, and we usually get around 10 kids per year from Jamestown with that partnership.
Would you see it continually increase?
I think so. Like us, surrounding districts, their populations are proportionally the same. So, depending on the size of the cohort, I think that we will get, in that range. So, what happens is, and this is a driver, just as we take in way more kids than leave Narragansett, but some do, right? We do have some that go to North Kingstown.
Right.
That's the main place that a student would go. I believe we have one in Carroll, and there are charter schools, and that is unfortunately a real driver in the way that it works in the state system. It's a money follows the child system.
Right.
So if we have a family that has a child in a charter school that then comes and moves to Narragansett, we're responsible for that tuition. We have very few students that come to our Narragansett schools and then leave to go to a charter school. Right? Often it's a family where the child is already going to that school and they move to where we are.
Yep.
The other big driver for us is families who are involved with DCYF. And what often happens is that the school systems are responsible for tuitions of students who are in DCYF care. And so, for example, there are some families where there's been a DCYF intervention, and according to that agency, the students are placed in an outplacement.
Right.
Not because we can't educate them, but because of family reasons. In that case, we have absolutely no say in what happens. They just decide and they send us the bill. And so we have 5 or 6 kids at $60,000 apiece that are that are in that program. And so, unfortunately, we really have no say. It's a mandate from the state. And so, those are very hard drivers to predict. And we've gotten hit with a number of those students, even some families that have never, the children have never set foot in the Narragansett schools, but the parents have moved to Narragansett, they established residency, and then we're responsible for the bill.
That's all grade levels, right?
Yes, that's across the board.
But the CTE program is mostly high school, right?
The CT, it can only be high school.
Only high school.
Yeah.
Is there any, there's no cross-district kind of programs in the middle school?
There's not, I'd love for there to be.
Is
But
that something you want to
unfortunately,
pursue?
if they want to change the state regulations to let us do it, we would be all there,
You can't do it, you can't.
but we can't do it right now. So
So the cutoff is
unfortunately,
what, 9th grade?
it is.
Yeah.
So that's the only way that students are allowed to go to a different program in the framework is that essentially they're thinking that they're pursuing the program that would be best for them. I really appreciated the council's support last spring when there was a danger of there being a legislative action at the State House to cut off our CTE programs. That would have been a major blow to our school system. And your support was really crucial helping to stop that, and so we're hopeful that that will not happen again.
So as you say, this program's a 50 to 60,000 per student.
Mhm.
When we take in a student from another, whether it's North Kingston or somewhere else, what are we getting for that?
So the way that the program works is that, and those are apples and oranges. So if a student is placed into a residential facility by DCYF, that is, I could get really technical with this, but it's basically the special education rate of an outplacement. And that is determined by the state, and that is somewhere between 50 and 60,000 for that particular child. If the CTE program is just a regular day-to-day school program, it's not residential, and so it's a totally different ballgame. Those are determined by a formula that's determined by the Department of Education that they came up with maybe 2 years ago, where it's based on a district's per pupil expenditure. So depending on the district, depends on what we get. So we advocated very strongly for it to be a tuition-based formula, so that no matter where you're coming from, this is what it costs to educate the child, this is what the district should pay. RIDE determined that they did not want to follow that formula for a lot of different reasons. And so they instead went with a money follows the child formula that mirrored the charter school legislation. And so, depending on where you're coming from, if the child comes from South Kingstown, it's pretty close to our per pupil. If they come from a district with less resources, we get less for them. But it's still, at scale, covers the cost of the programs.
Do you find that the students that are going to North Kingston, they're going to North Kingston for what? Is there a computer?
There's not. So they will often go for, there's a business program that is a very popular program in North Kingstown. We often find it's students that live a little closer to the North Kingstown side of town. There's also a robotics program that they're very heavily into.
Do you know how many students that program is producing in North Kingston that like wouldn't be just Narragansett, would be maybe East Greenwich and
Oh,
Walpole,
yeah,
West
they
Warwick?
are taking kids from all over the place. So everywhere from Cherahoe, they have a large number of Warwick students that are attending in North Kingstown. I don't have their exact draw, but it's a pretty wide area. And we are as well. So we're taking students in from Exeter, from West Greenwich, from West Warwick, from Westerly, the towns in Cherahoe. So we have a pretty large draw as well.
Are they Division I for sports? North
They are
Kingston?
Division I in
So that
sports,
might be
yes.
another reason.
It's different for every family, certainly.
Is there something that in the future we will reach to do like more than the plumbing program, more than, I mean, are there ideas out there to say,
There
this is an
sure are.
avenue we should take?
Great question. So, we certainly have different opportunities based on the interests of students. So, a business program is, certainly something that, we can think about. Another piece that we have toyed with is the engineering program. There's a bit of a moratorium on approving programs right now from the state CTE board because they approved so many so fast. They approved literally hundreds of programs in the last 2 years. And so they're taking a step back and doing an assessment of what is it that we really need, right? And which programs can we truly support. So both from a internal piece of we want to make sure our programs are the best they can possibly be and focus our energies in growing those, and they are really great programs. And we get a lot of recognition at the state level for those programs. There's also not a real possibility of opening any in the next year or so is what I'm hearing from the CTE board as they consolidate and think about what is the state need. They work really in close partnership with the governor's workforce board, and there is a whole CTE board which we go to and attend regularly that outlines a lot of the things that they're needing to do. I could talk for hours. There's 12 priority sectors, anything you want to know.
So unfortunately, this year we saw more violence in schools. Have we learned anything or made any changes to make people feel safer?
Great question. So, here's what we know. Having great relationships with our students is the way that you make your schools the safest, right? And we have that. So we spend a lot of time doing those pieces. We have done so much with security over the last year. So not only have we done the infrastructure, right? We work really closely with Sean and the Narragansett Police Department with our SROs. We put in the ALICE program in the last year, which was really around training students should something happen, what do you do, right? And so it's not so much cower down behind the desk anymore as really identify, all right, should I evacuate? Should I go in a different direction? Do we need to create a distraction? Do we need to blockade? Kind of all those different pieces. This year we worked really closely with Sandy Hook Promise. I don't know if you all are familiar with them. And we've done a few things with them. So we put in an anonymous reporting system. So we are a pilot district along with North Kingstown and Jamestown in the system. And so it's called the Say Something Anonymous Reporting System. What that does is allows people to put in tips. Should they hear something, or should they feel like it's a weekend and they can't do anything, or they just feel a little funny about saying something. We underwent training with our Narragansett PD to put that in place. And so then there's a whole protocol that goes through that's manned by trained staff 24/7 at a call center. They call us or they get in touch with us if it's a life crisis emergency, and we move forward from there. We also have a bunch of other technological fixes in partnership with Google and some other places where we're able to monitor communications should something be being planned or going awry. You know, that does also bring up, that's kind of the life safety pieces with our students. There's also just the technology safety, right? And so we've done a lot to make sure our technological infrastructure is safe. So there have been a number of towns and school systems that have been held hostage over the last year. We've done a lot of work on that, you know, with having remote servers, with having firewalls, with having all the right things in place so that, you know, for a lot of our students, can you imagine getting your transcript hacked and not being able to apply to college, right? You know, any of those things, we've done a lot of work to keep that information safe. So, it's a tough world out there.
Has any of your discussion been with that third recess officer?
So, you know, Sean and I have talked about it. I certainly will be happy to continue to talk to him about it.
I believe at the elementary school, in the lunchroom, they have switched over to reusable
They have.
trays and plates. Is that something that's happened at the other schools as well?
Not yet. That was really spearheaded by the students and goes along their composting
Yeah, I
as
saw
well
that, yeah.
and doing those pieces. So the middle school is kind of considering it. They're trying to have it be student-led. So at the middle school and the high school, they're still considering that and looking at the success of the elementary school program. So I expect that to move forward with the kids that are at the elementary school now.
So was that, I know it's kind of like the momentum was more of a grassroots thing, but what about the funding for that? Was that fundraised?
It was probably about a third, right? So a third fundraised, some came from our vendor, and some came from the school system.
Gotcha, okay. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
That's it, sounds like the state's putting a cap on our CTE program,
For now,
putting a wet blanket over it, right?
and you know, to a certain degree, we're always looking for those opportunities to grow. And you know, should they come, we'll take them. Right now, we're fortunate that we moved as quickly as we did to get the programs in. If you think about it, you know, 3 years ago, we didn't even have any programs,
Right.
right? And so we've moved forward really quickly to well, we've always had the ag program, it hasn't always been a CTE program.
Right.
So we've moved really quickly to get those programs established and approved in the window of opportunity that we had.
Nationally recognized?
Nationally recognized, exactly. And so, we're really pleased. If we're gonna do something, we're gonna do it well. And so, we're really happy to have those programs and continue to enhance them. And, we're thrilled. For example, our educator prep program, we met with URI. They're thrilled to have that program as a feeder for their program. They want to send a professor over to co-teach one of the classes with our students. They'll enter URI with advanced standing when you usually have to wait a year and go in with the certifications. Some of the certifications they need to become a full-time teacher. They will graduate with the certifications to be a teaching assistant already as soon as they finish high school.
That's a jump.
We did get a resolution emailed to us about field trips. Is that something we
Yes.
should discuss?
Sure. So the outgoing Commissioner of Education, so before our present Commissioner, one of the last things he did before he left was there was a case in East Greenwich where a parent went for what's known as a Commissioner's decision around field trips, basically arguing that according to the BEP, Basic Education Plan, people could not be asked to pay for a field trip. He sided with the parent and the ACLU to say that no one could charge anyone for any field trips. And so the result of that came after budget time, and well after a lot of the trips were planned, for example, going to Spain, going to these other pieces. So it really threw a lot of districts into disarray, where we have kind of followed the guidance of our attorneys and of some of the professional organizations, where we can no longer say, okay, third grade, you're going to Mystic. It used to be everyone, put in $10. If you can't afford to pay, the school system will cover it. Now it's the school system has to cover it all. And so that's a
You
significant.
can't accept donations?
They can accept donations,
Okay.
but they can't tell you how much
Right,
you
right.
have to donate,
Right,
right? And so,
You can't do a suggested number?
that is open to interpretation. And so, so our principals have been really thoughtful around kind of doing some fundraising. We've had incredible support from our PTOs. But some of the ripple effect of that is the school system can no longer offer trips to Italy or trips to Spain or those pieces. That has to be kind of outside of school. We do have some teachers that may continue those trips, but on their own as kind of private contractors, not through the auspices of the school system. So it's been really disruptive, things that we used to be able to offer to students through the school system. We're now not able to offer as much. For example, we have a group of students that have been accepted to present at a major scientific symposium in California. They're needing to fundraise to such a degree, but they can't really tell people how much money they need. So it gets really, the ruling made it really challenging. I think it was done in, I believe, the right spirit, which was a spirit of equity and basically trying to say, all kids should have the chance to access these field trips. I think the unintended consequence was in a district like Narragansett, where we made sure every kid could go, it has put a damper on what sorts of opportunities we can offer kids.
Is the reaction in Narragansett similar to what you've heard around the state?
Yes, so there's a lot of angst around that. And I know there's going to be a major push when the legislative session comes forward to get some ruling on how to make the field trips more accessible to students long term.
So the commissioner, just the technical part of that, so the commissioner, could the new commissioner just overturn it?
She could.
And then could the legislature override the commissioner?
So a commissioner's decision is basically almost like an arbitration, right? Where the commissioner, someone has gone to a school committee, not liked they've made a complaint, they've gone to their school committee, they haven't liked the answer of the school committee or disagreed with it, and so they can appeal to commissioner's hearing, right? And so the commissioner's decision is the outcome of that hearing, but it has to be based on the commissioner's interpretation of state statute. So should the statute change, the commissioner's decision would be moot, and therefore it would be open to reinterpretation.
So the legislature could
Could
change
do
it?
Correct.
Is that what your resolution was asking the legislature to do?
Yes.
Asking for some changes in the language.
To the legislature?
And so the current commissioner could overturn it. She's chosen not to take up the case so far.
She's
And
got her hands full.
she certainly does, yes.
And if she was to overturn it, or on recommendations that people suggested, I mean, you could set that we are gonna do a field trip per se to Italy, Portugal, wherever, and put a dollar amount of, we need to raise $15,000-$20,000. This is why we're gonna do this, so that we can raise that 20,000 to take a class of 12, 14, 20, 25. I mean, that's basically what we're looking to do.
Correct. And so, again, I think it was well-intended, because they didn't want to put a child in a position of having to say, I can't afford to go, right? You know, there were ways around that in practice that I think
That always
did
was,
really well.
people always came forward.
Now nobody
People
goes.
always came
Right.
forward. Now no one can go.
Backfired.
And so,
Government helping out.
you know, my hope is that there's a middle ground, right, where you can kind of respect the needs of students who may not have the resources to access those types of trips, but also allow the development of opportunities for students, because those field trips are really important educational opportunities for students. And so we're trying to do as many as we can, but unfortunately, you know, the budget won't bear for us to fund every field trip for every student. It's just too big a burden. And so we'll have to come up with a formula that allocates a certain amount of resources per student to be used per grade level, and they'll go down from multiple field trips a year, probably to one.
So I want to be respectful of times. I know your meeting is starting shortly, but
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate, like, Peter hit all the highlights of our budget priorities. I think he did a nice job really kind of hitting those things, but please keep the lines of communication open. And, you know, reach out to Peter directly. You can certainly reach out to any of the five of us. You know, Peter and Karen have those kind of direct answers. If we want to do a workshop in the middle of budget season as opposed to the end, or like whatever you guys need, you know, because we definitely appreciate the spirit and the support that we've had from you guys the past couple of years. Last year was a very, you know, modest increase of 1.38, and I think we used those funds very thoughtfully. I mean, having a high-quality preschool for all Narragansett residents, that was a big priority. We had a lot of families on a wait list that wanted this programming, you know, and to meet that need, so our students are as prepared as they can be when they go into kindergarten and they stay in our school. If, you know, the residents here needed full-time preschool, and if we didn't offer that to meet that need, they're gonna pursue it elsewhere, and then they may be comfortable in other settings and not come to our school, so, you know, that was a priority. The asset protection is huge. I mean, you can tell by how we compare in our Jacobs report with other districts. You support our budget, you know, many years in a row that we can do that maintenance all along, so. But please just kind of keep the communication open, reach out directly to us. If you want to have another workshop, you know, anytime we're open. And then we'll present the detail to you when we do like the public hearing on the school budget. That's when Peter will really get into the detail, you know, with the overall budget. The building committee, Justin and I serve on that. Our capital reserve committee, you know, we'll still get that meeting going. So there are opportunities between now and when we pass our budget to me too, but please just reach out to us.
So right now, we look like we're April 27th, we're tentatively talking about for our work session with you.
Well, I think that would be the public hearing on the budget?
Yep,
The school
so,
budget?
There's a school budget public hearing March 23rd.
Okay.
So if you wanted it toward the beginning, it would probably be more like late March, because April 27th would be closer to the end of the period.
Yeah, I think it's,
so,
you know, you guys can certainly talk. Sometimes I think it's helpful to have our workshop after Peter presents the full budget, after we do the public hearing. So you're right, Matt, March 23rd is when, you know, you'll get the full level details. You know, we've got that tentative April 27th, but if you want to have that sooner, you know, we
It
can
makes
certainly.
sense to do that, yeah.
I would definitely be on board with making that
What's the
as
student count?
close to after the
Um,
presentation, so it gives everybody time, you know, to be able to work the iron things out.
Or next
So why don't you guys look at time, schedule, we'll coordinate with Terry, that was something in the late
Yeah.
March, early April timeframe.
And I
And
think,
maybe, because sometimes, yeah, that can be tacked on, that late April one feels tacked on sometimes.
here, what the discussion over here is, so we're presenting on March 23rd. So should we get a tentative meeting date shortly after that? You know, instead of a placeholder for April 27th, something sooner than that. And I think part of it is, that's when you guys are deep into budget season, where you're really having a lot of public hearings on your side. So we're flexible.
so the I will just remind everyone, we certainly can be totally flexible. The 23rd is typically before the town council has done all of their department budgets, right? And kind of gone through this, the schedule may be different depending on how Jim wants to structure it. And so the public hearing on the overall town budget is typically the week that follows that. And then once you've gone through all the departments of the town in the past, you then wanted to meet with the school after you have a better view of the overall budget. We certainly can adjust that depending on your needs.
We could put in a tentative March 30th maybe. Terry, is that a Monday?
Yeah. Is there anything on that, Terry?
I don't have the full calendar with me.
Will you have had the hearing on the town budget by then? Like if the school budget's presenting March 23rd,
We could put them as tentative though, like if
Yeah.
needed, April 27th tentative and March 30th tentative. And then we'd probably dump one of them. That might be better to do it. But if you could even change that tonight. If it-
I'd rather do it soon.
It makes sense, yeah. And you also have the opportunity to come back together on the 27th. I would get rid of that. I think I'd leave them both as if
Yeah.
needed, yeah. That way people kind of have it in their head.
you guys good?
Good.
Motion to adjourn at 7:22?
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right, all